Every Monday, we take you on a journey through Ontario Morning country to get a sense of the music that makes up our listening area. We call this segment Sounds Like Here. Our next artist is an internationally award-winning vocalist, an actor, dancer, and an avid songwriter. And what if I told you that she's only 17 years old? Innisfil's Anna Goldsmith has been creating a lot of buzz with her new wave grunge sound. Her latest single is called Brain Boyfriend, and she is here now to tell us more about it.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
So you have quite the resume. I just listed off everything that you do, and you're only 17, which is crazy. Like I wasn't doing any of that when I was 17. But how did your musical journey begin?
Well, I started out in theater, and I'm classically trained. So I started out singing when I was around 7 to 9, and I just fell in love with it, and I couldn't stop. Like, when I was really young, I never stopped just singing. I often was singing like Cookie Monster songs and things like that. And then I grew up and just kept falling in love with it over and over again whenever I performed. And I can't stop.
And who are some of your influences?
My biggest influence right now is Janis Joplin.
Janis Joplin, really?
I love her so much. Like, whenever I listen to her, it makes me cry. I love her so much.
How did you discover Janis Joplin's music?
Well, I actually don't know. What was I doing? It just happened. It feels like it was just a sign. I don't know. I know a lot of rock and classic rock from the people I surround myself with. Like, my parents, they're both really into rock and like Guns N' Roses and Led Zeppelin and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then also my performance coach, Irina, amazing, by the way. She's really into that kind of music too. And I think she's the one that introduced me to Janis Joplin, actually. And then my favorite song is Cry Baby, and I can't stop listening to it. And I actually performed it for the first time at the Rivoli on Tuesday.
Really?
Yeah, it was so much fun. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience.
What did that feel like for you?
Performing for me is like I am the best version of myself. And so performing Cry Baby, which is for like the first time, which is one of my favorite songs, was really just empowering, honestly. I felt really, really inspired afterwards. I was like, I just inspired myself. What the heck? But it was really, really amazing. It was really cool.
I can only imagine, because that is a very powerful song.
Yeah.
So to be able to perform a song that you yourself are moved by.
Exactly.
I'm sure that had a huge effect on you. 2024 has been quite the year for you, Anna. You were able to showcase your talent at the legendary Cameron House during Canadian Music Week. As well, you were recognized by the National Association of Teachers of Singings. You won an award at their National Student Audition. So what has this entire year felt like for you?
This entire year for me has been full of learning, number one, because I am performing more consistently, so I'm learning new things every time, because that's what happens. And also, I've just been able to meet so many people that inspire me. Like at Canadian Music Week, it's all about networking and meeting new people. But for me, I don't really think of networking as networking, because that scares me. Because it's scary thinking you're talking to all these like super important people. So I'm just like, I'm just going to go and make new friends and see what happens, you know? And so I think that it was just a whole year of making new friends and meeting new people and being able to prove to myself that, yeah, I can do this and I'm like meant to do this job.
What does it feel like to be able to do that, but do it from a place like Innisfil, which is outside of a major city like Toronto?
Yeah. Well, at some point, it's a little difficult not being in Toronto, because obviously it's a major city, and going and performing here is a bit more difficult than it would be if I was in Toronto. But really, there are a lot of connections in like Innisfil and Barrie. Like they have the Canadian Music Cooperative down there, which I worked with over the summer as well, which is how I got a bunch of gigs around Barrie and around where I live. So I got to meet new people. But I think that it's not that difficult if you really like try and go and meet people and you're always going out, you know?
I like that mentality, because networking, or in the case for you, making friends, It's so vital in this kind of industry, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like if you don't do it, you're not taking the right step to get your music out there. And it sounds like the steps that you've taken this year are certainly paying off. Your most recent single is called Brain Boyfriend. Now, I heard that this song was inspired by a recent trip of yours to California.
Well, I was in like a situationship. By the way, I've said that word so many times this past year, and I do not like that word. I don't know. It's so funny, but...
I'm not sure if our listeners are familiar with the situationship, but maybe they can Google it.
Yeah, like a situationship is basically you're not dating, but you kind of both know that you want to date, but it's so stupidly complicated. Like, it frustrated me so much, so then I wrote a song about it. But I was in California at the time, and I was in the situationship with this guy who wasn't in California, but I was making all these new friends and meeting all these new people in California, and there's this guy back at home that I was in a situationship with, and it was just, it really like encapsulated, like took over my life. I don't think encapsulated is the right word, but it really took over my life, and that really bothered me when I looked back on it, because I was like, oh, why was I thinking about a boy? I was in California. What the heck? So I wrote Brain Boyfriend, and it's a fun one. I'm proud of myself.
It sounds like it almost helped you get through that situation.
It did. Definitely it did. Because even just like writing your experiences down on paper, like just as like a journal and stuff, obviously like we know that helps people get through things. And for me, I just turned to music, because I find when I write in journals, it just turns into rhyming poetry anyway. So then I just make a song out of it.
Well, it is a pretty catchy song. I've listened to it a bunch of times, and your sound itself is described as new wave grunge.
Yeah.
How did you go about sort of defining the genre, or genres in this case, that you wanted to play in?
Yeah. Well, for me, like I listened to a lot of Hole, like Courtney Love Hole, and the Cranberries. Like those were my two of my main inspirations for this song. Like Hole, Violet, and Zombie by the Cranberries, and also Blur. I really love Blur, and so that's where like the new wave comes in. But those were like the inspirations for this song, and that's how I got to defining it.
I love that you're naming bands that I'm familiar with.
Yes, of course.
And
they're good.
I'm going to give props to your mom later, because I'm sure that she's a fan of those bands as well.
Yeah, she totally is.
So 2024, great year for Anna Goldsmith. What does the future have in store?
Yeah. Well, I want to start working on new music more consistently, and I have these 5 songs that I'm really falling in love with. Like, I wrote them, and I want to go and record them and release an EP this like year, like 2024, 2025. And I want to just be performing as much as I can, keep going out there, keep talking to people. And, you know, in 5 years, headlining a show.
I think that's a really great goal, and I think you're headed in the right direction. And
Thank
Anna,
you.
I'm convinced this isn't going to be the last time that you and I will be chatting.
Yeah, we're friends now, see? So now we can talk all the time.
We just networked.
Exactly. We just
Networking in
networked.
real time, that's for sure. That's Innisfil's Anna Goldsmith. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Here's her latest song for our Ontario Morning music column. Sounds like here. This is Brain Boyfriend.